Valleys was an absolute marvelous dream. It was a place that young people and old people can come by and learn all about what home was like, what family was like, what community was like. It was knowing how to get integrated with each other. It was to be able to discover people's potential and character and talent so that they could use those talents in order to make the community work and to be able to take care of community needs.
George told us of his vision for Twin Valleys. A week later, George and Mike Perkins dropped me off at Twin Valleys, and it started. I put up the first tent. I built the outhouse.
Having this Twin Valleys experience really broadened and extended that base of family with the multi-generations, and was a very eye-opening experience.
I was part of a big project, making a difference in the world, working with these young people who were in trouble. But while I was working with them, of course I was working on myself. I mean, it just doesn't work any other way. When I came back out into this society, I was able to give, which I couldn't do before I came there. That was what George Bullied gave me.
I learned a lot of people skills. It's all come in handy over the past years. I draw from all my experience there almost every day.
Twin Valleys confirmed a lot of my own beliefs that were innate in me, you know, even when I was a teenager or even a young child. I had different beliefs from everybody else, but I couldn't really find a place to fit in with friends and in society. And once I got there, I was like, oh, this is it.
Mostly, I suppose I learned about the power of truth and keeping an open mind and compassion and love.
In Korea, when I saw all of the carnage and the destruction to human beings as well as to what had been produced by human beings, that somehow I was almost ordained to be one who goes and builds to replace what was so terribly taken apart.
I was looking for a commune because I had a vision of community. And I remember one rainy night, I'd heard this rumor that George was starting a new place. And I went and knocked on George's door, and all I said was, I'm with you, George. Whatever you're doing, I want to be there. And that's how my initiation into Twin Valleys came about.
We left our jobs and packed everything we owned into a van, looking for a new way of life, first of all. So we had written all of these communities, and we're going around and visiting them.
I was 13, and things weren't going too well at home, and something pushed me over the edge, and I just kind of hopped on a bus, and there I was, showed up, and everybody was there with welcome arms.
I think I was looking for an alternate lifestyle when I came to Twin Valleys, another sense of community and family on a much broader scale, and a place to find an alternative type of education.
The end of the line for kids under 16?
I came through the court system, having to
go to juvenile court, but it was a month before my 16th birthday, so they gave me a choice. I could go to traditional reform school and do some probation after that, or I could go to Twin Valleys.
Well, I went down because I felt I'd like to help George and help the kids that were down there, not knowing that I needed help myself.
Saw George, and I was in one of his meetings in which he was working with his staff, who were really his students, and I said, you know, I think I need to be here for a while.
Mom had decided to move us to Twin Valleys. We'd gone up to visit a year before then, and for a weekend. So I knew about the place, but at the time it was very primitive. And then she had made plans for the next year for us to move.
No, I had no other options but for the fact that my dad took me to Twin Valleys and said, "You're going here." So I went there, never looked back. It was great. It was great. Best thing that's ever happened.
I used to work at one point for Children's Aid, and I left there saying, if that's how you work with children, then I never want to do it again. And I was in a bookstore, and I saw People of the Valley. And this is how I thought teenagers should be treated.
I went to Twin Valleys School through the extraordinary luck of my grade 12 French teacher. She said, "I know just the place for you." And she took me there. She took me there on a weekend. When I didn't really know what to do with myself, I thought that I could get into some trouble, and I didn't want that to happen. And it was exactly what I needed to do.
I couldn't get along with school, and somebody told me about Twin Valleys, and I thought, what a great idea.
I was attracted to Twin Valleys and wanted to come there because of the fact that you were doing such good for these socially problematic children. I thought, you know, working with these young people is really something I would like to do. And having had 7 kids of my own, I felt I knew a little bit about it.
I think my third visit, you asked if I wanted to live there. And I was, at that point, perhaps I was looking for something new in my life, and I accepted your offer.
I had run into some people who had hitchhiked through and told me about this farming community. A group of hippies were living together, and I didn't really know much about it until I went.
That you unlawfully did commit a delinquency, and that you did commit an offense contrary to the Criminal Code of Canada. And what do you feel about going to Twin Valleys?
I'd really like to go there and try it in.
I was sent to Twin Valleys by the juvenile court system after progressing through. At that point, there was 7 levels of probation, and I had managed. I'd aced them. I'd got them all. Yep.
They asked me. They said, "Chris, what brought you to Twin Valleys?" I said, "Plainclothes police car."
When I arrived, it was 150 people. About 60 of them were students. About another 30 or 40 could have been students. And the balance were what we called communitarians. I was 15, about to turn 16 when I moved to Twin Valleys. There was just a feeling or an aura about it. Although I would get reprimanded, or I would get a returning cycle, or I sat through my share of heavies, there was a level of caring that was so obvious that I had not encountered previously. That broken telephone game happens in our human interaction, because this guy, what he asked us was, he had heard in town that every morning we met in the 60-foot dome at 8:30. Completely accurate, except what he also had heard was that at which point we all took our clothes off and ran around and danced. And I'm sitting there going, I wish. 150 people living together and working towards common goals. That was awesome. In the later days, it was no longer communitarians, it was staff members, and I ended up becoming a staff member. So perhaps a turning point would be when I realized who better to work with, these little bastards or buggers. than a previous little bastard or bugger. One of the coolest things that ever happened was going back into the courtroom with Judge Fuller, who I'd spoken of earlier, and going back as a staff member with a student. I went back into the chambers with Judge Fuller, and his grin was just right across his face, and that felt really nice.
The only thing there is the journey, no arrival. Yep. Once you're into the journey, you've already arrived.
George affected my life because he managed to get through whatever it was I had going on. He somehow transcended my concepts of what adults were and how they should be. And he saw my shit. George had walked the walk. He'd walked the path. He'd been there. He knew it. As cheesy as that sounds. At the age of 15, the you don't work, you don't eat rule, that landed. I mean, obviously, I've been self-employed now for 18 years, so I got that if you don't put out, you don't get back, right? Like, it's pretty straightforward. I own and operate a company called the Nutman Company for a living. I've been doing that for 18 years. I sell nuts and candies, but beyond that, what I have come to describe my work is that we all want to play. A lot of people have forgotten how to play. I remind people to play. That's what I do.
There are no experts but you when it comes to your experience, when it comes to your hurts, your angers, your lonelinesses, your fears and your frustrations. But only when you open it up, when you lay it all out, and when you put it all out, and you give it willingly and joyfully, and you lay it all out, then you know you are not alone.
I'm still, to this day, thankful that George had the gumption to go through with what he knew was the right thing to do in making that community as a place for people to heal and to grow and to support each other.
There was a place for tough love at Twin Valleys. There were times when tough love is necessary. Sometimes it takes that little extra nudge and push to get the points across when people are rebelling.
Oh, I definitely think that there was a strong influence of tough love, and I think it's very appropriate. I think the problem with kids today is they don't get enough tough love. They're allowed too much freedom, and they don't have any direction.
If you went in deeper, you had to get past the crap before you got to the heart. And once you got to the heart of the matter, then the whole thing really started to open up. And at that point, tough love had nothing to do with it.
If a student didn't do their work at some time, there's even times when we would withhold their supper till later or whatever. I mean, whatever could make it real for those students, we were prepared to do it. And George led the way. He did the most amazing things that you just couldn't get away with in a normal situation.
No matter how tough it was, they knew that we all cared. That's why we were there. So nothing was done out of meanness. Everything was done out of love.
I don't think of it as discipline, but I guess it is handing out a certain type of a discipline, but you're doing it in a sensitive way using love.
Like somebody like me who was very strong and not being who I was because I was terrified of becoming that. How do you get there without somebody giving you the boot somehow and caring when they're giving you the boot? And that was the difference right there.
I do recall some of the boys there doing certain things and having a choice of leaving the farm or shaving their heads.
I'm going to grow it until I die. All of the people that criticize my hair are people who don't have any.
Now, I recall a certain punishment.
Uh-oh.
If somebody got caught on the property doing something not quite kosher.
Cut.
I remember this being a very...
story. This is not unkosher.
No.
In writing up the story of Twin Valleys, I've also written in there a lot of the hair cutting incidents, you know,
yeah,
about the people who screw up and then Usually it's when they had marijuana or something like this. You know? And there had to be a returning cycle. And the returning cycle was that they had to be willing to give up that which they loved and cherished the most. And it was always their hair. So they had to give up their hair.
It was the 70s.
We grew our own food. We built our own buildings. We learned to do so many things. And the dome you see in the back, that was a symbol. It was built by young people, 14, 15, 16, 17. They crawled all over it like ants. They did the impossible things with wheelbarrows of fresh concrete, laying it down to make a floor. We had a sawmill across the road from us, and using that to begin to build and to have planks. And the trees that we planted, something like 1,000 trees per an acre, and I think there are 40 acres that we planted trees in. And we said that we should plant trees to replace the wood that we were using to build our community with. We decided we did not have a right to take it unless we were willing to put back in more than we took out. And what was 100 acres of scrubland that all it had on it was cattle and was going to waste, we made it into a virtual Garden of Eden. You could go through this place for days and tell stories about young people who had been rejected by society. But they too were made in the likeness and image of God. And all you had to do was to discover that likeness and image and use it as part of your communal living. And boy, it happened. They learned how to produce more than they consumed. They learned community, a commune, an intentional place to live that was built according to the designs of heaven. And in doing so, they would discover more and more the truth of it, the design that life has for them, their potential, their character, their talents, their life. How are you doing?
How you doing, George?
Hey. How you doing?
Who's who?
Glad to see you're still kicking.
Oh, yeah. When the students started to describe their experience with me, what they didn't really understand was that they were describing my experience with them. And when you see those people now, 25 years later, and how they look and feel and talk and act and what their lives are all about and how they're able to take what they had at Twin Valleys and give it consistently, continuously, year after year after they left. It became a natural part of their life and their living. Bless the Lord, build the house. They that labor, labor in vain. I never felt that anything that we did at Twin Valleys was labor in vain. It was labor that consistently fulfilled a dream.
When I got to Twin Valleys, it was helping me to realize that I was on a path and decide what that was going to be.
The bonds of friendship at Twin Valleys that were created were incredible.
What attracted me was the acceptance from the people there that lived there of who you are.
As time moved on, I began to learn how to take care of myself and be more responsible and help other people be responsible.
What Twin Valleys did for me is helped me to recognize who I am, without a doubt.
I had a choice to go into the darkness that everybody else was swallowed up in, or join the light.
I gradually found all that I needed. It was all new to me, and I stayed pretty low, and I didn't want to get into any trouble.
There were a lot of other people who believed that we were more and capable of more than society was telling us.
The greatest thing that Twin Valleys did for me was to help me become independent.
The amount of growth that I experienced at Twin Valleys, I never even knew was possible.
What I learned at Twin Valleys, I've now been able to put into everything that I do. And it's consciously there. It's there all the time.
It just kind of validated my life and my beliefs. And it gave me a point from where to move on to.
That began to open up my heart so that I'd understand myself better, connect with my world better, appreciate the gifts that I had to bring into the world.
Without Twin Valleys, I might have been dead.
Being at Twin Valleys, I think, gave me more courage to move on with my life.
I know I'm much richer because of Twin Valleys.
We learned the art of living. What more is there, you know? The art of living, that's it. I remember those words. It's the art of living and be thankful.
When I heard you were going to be here, I thought that's perfect because that gives me the opportunity to say thank you.
It was interesting to see and to feel and to share the spirituality that each of them had. And every time we sat and talked to one of them, I would tune into their spirituality. And that spirituality, I called it the spirit of the valley. It was dreams taking form, and the form was people. It was marvelous, you know, to discover the character and the talents that they had before they themselves even knew anything about it, because they were young people. And that was part of what exploration should be for them. Other than our system, that isn't always taking place, but here it did. It was a purpose. It was saying, this is how you discover who you are, why you were here, where you come from, and where you're going. I had a dream that became a vision. Not bad for one man in his lifetime.